It's 5:47 in the morning. You're still half asleep, shuffling to the kitchen, and the cold hits you before the light does. You pull your robe tighter. You walk past the thermostat. You tap it up 3 degrees. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you already know, that's another $40 this month. Maybe $50. Now let me show you a different morning. Same temperature outside. Same time of day. A farmhouse in Elkhart County, Indiana. No thermostat on the wall. No furnace in the basement. The father walks downstairs in his stocking feet, and the floor is warm. The kitchen is warm. The front room is warm. He hasn't touched a single dial, paid a single bill, or burned a drop of natural gas. He never has. His father never did either. Neither did his grandfather. The system heating that house costs less than $300 to put together. It runs on physics, not fuel. And the reason your contractor never mentioned it isn't because it's complicated. It's because complicated is profitable. And this isn't my name is not important right now. What's important is what I found over 4 years of visiting Amish settlements in Indiana, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, sitting at kitchen tables, walking through barns, asking questions that most outsiders never think to ask. What I found was a heating system so effective, so affordable, and so completely ignored by mainstream construction that the first time I understood how it worked, I sat in my truck for 20 minutes just thinking. By the time this video ends, you're going to know 3 things. You're going to know exactly why your house was built the way it was, and who benefited from that decision. You're going to know the specific physical principle that Amish families have used since the early 1700s to keep their homes at a comfortable temperature through the hardest winters in the Northeast. And you're going to know the exact weekend project under $300, no permit, no contractor, that I built in my own home, and that cut my heating bill by 34% in the first winter alone. Stay with me, because this starts with a story most people have never heard. In 1919, something happened in a quiet meeting hall in Wayne County, Ohio, that most American history books completely ignore. The leaders of the Amish communities, the bishops, the elders, the men who set the rules their communities would live by, gathered to discuss one question. The electrical grid was spreading. Power lines were going up across rural America. Their English neighbors were connecting one farmhouse at a time. And the question on the table was simple. Should we? They said no, not because they feared technology, not because they were confused by it. They said no because they understood something that most Americans in 1919 were too excited to see clearly. The moment you connect to a system controlled by someone else, you are no longer self-sufficient. You are a customer. And customers pay every month, forever. One bishop at that meeting reportedly said, and I'm paraphrasing from a historical account, that a wire into your house is a chain out of it. They weren't wrong. While their neighbors were celebrating electric lights and central heating, the Amish were quietly doubling down on something older, something that had kept European farmhouses warm since the Middle Ages, something that required no monthly invoice, no utility account, and no dependence on any company, pipeline, or power station. They were doubling down on the building itself. Because a properly built house, oriented correctly, with the right interior materials, doesn't need a furnace. The sun provides the heat. The walls store it. Physics delivers it while you sleep. That's not a theory. That's 300 years of lived practice in the coldest winters the American Northeast has ever produced. Let me give you the principle in one sentence, because it really is that simple. Dense materials absorb heat slowly and release it slowly. That's it. Okay, that is the entire foundation of what the Amish figured out, and what most modern homes are specifically designed to ignore. Here's what that means in practice. In winter, the sun travels low across the southern sky. It doesn't rise high overhead the way it does in July. It stays close to the horizon, which means the south-facing window in January acts almost like a solar panel. It pulls in hours of direct sunlight all morning and into the early afternoon. Now, if that sunlight hits a thick stone wall or a heavy tile floor, something remarkable happens. That material absorbs the energy. It doesn't heat up quickly. It just slowly, steadily fills with warmth like a battery being charged. Then the sun goes down. The temperature outside drops. And that wall, that floor, that mass of stone, or brick, or dense ceramic, it begins to release every calorie it stored. Slowly, evenly, all night long. No thermostat, no gas jet, no electric coil, just stored sunlight coming back out of the wall at exactly the moment you need it. Researchers at a major agricultural university documented this in their extension publications and found that homes built with this principle, south-facing living spaces, dense interior materials, carry a heating load that is 30 to 40% lower than conventionally built homes. Before any other modification, before insulation upgrades or window replacements or anything else. Just orientation and mass. 30 to 40% of your heating bill, gone, because of which direction sunlight enters your house and what it lands on when it gets there. The Amish didn't read that research paper. They already knew, because their great-great-grandmothers had lived through enough Pennsylvania winters to understand that the warm side of the house was the south side. And so you built your kitchen, your sitting room, your family spaces on the south side, and you used stone and brick and heavy plaster, and the house took care of the rest. Now here's the question you should be asking. If this works, and it does, demonstrably, with documented results going back centuries, why isn't every house in America built this way? Why did your house get a furnace instead of a south wall? I'll tell you exactly why. After World War II, the United States went through the largest residential construction boom in its history. Millions of homes were built in less than a decade to house returning veterans and growing families. Whole neighborhoods went up practically overnight. And in that rush, a decision was made quietly, without fanfare, that would shape every heating bill you have paid for the rest of your life. Houses were oriented toward the street, not toward the sun, toward the road. Builders wanted the front door facing the curb so the house looked attractive from the driveway. Whether that meant the living room faced north, east, or west didn't matter to them. It mattered enormously to your wallet. A north-facing living room gets almost no direct winter sunlight. There's nothing to collect, nothing to store. The house stays cold, no matter what you put inside it. Which means you need a furnace. Which means you need fuel. Which means you need a supply contract from a utility company every single month for decades. That arrangement suited a lot of very powerful companies just fine. Now, I'm not here to tell you there was a smoky backroom conspiracy, but I will tell you this. The organizations that shaped post-war residential building codes were not staffed by people who wanted your house to heat itself. They were staffed by people who had a very strong financial interest in making sure it didn't. The Amish watched all of this from a careful distance. They saw their English neighbors hand over their energy independence, one house at a time. And they kept building south-facing farmhouses with stone floors and brick chimneys running through the center of the structure, not because they were stubborn, but because they were paying attention. I want to tell you about the first Amish home I walked into with this question in mind. It was a February morning in LaGrange County, Indiana. Cold enough that my breath was visible inside my truck. The family, I'll call them the Millers, because they asked me not to use their real name, met me at the back door. The back door was warm, not heated by a vent warm, just warm. The way a kitchen gets warm when someone has been cooking for hours. I walked through the utility room into the main kitchen and stopped. There was a cast iron cook stove in the corner. A modus fire, probably lit 90 minutes earlier. The stove itself wasn't roaring. It was just present, quietly doing its job. But what I noticed wasn't the stove. It was the wall behind it. It was a different color than the surrounding walls. Slightly darker. And it was this. Sounds strange until you touch one. It was warm to the back of my hand from 3 inches away. It wasn't burning hot. It was radiating, slowly, the way a cup of tea radiates warmth into the air around it. I asked the father, a quiet man in his late 50s, who had grown up in this house, what that wall was made of. He told me his grandfather had mixed the plaster himself. Sand, clay, a small amount of fiber binding, about 1.25 inches thick over the standard interior wall. He said the wall took a full day and a half to reach temperature the first time they charged it, at the start of winter. But once it was charged, once it had been heated properly with that morning fire, it held that heat for close to a full day. One small fire, once per day. The wall did everything else. I asked him what they paid to heat the house. He thought about it for a moment and said they cut about 2.5 cords of wood every fall from their own trees. That was the winter's heat. 2.5 cords. I looked it up later. The energy equivalent of 2.5 cords of firewood is roughly what a typical American forced-air furnace burns through in about 6 to 8 weeks. His family was heating a 1,300 square foot 2-story farmhouse through an entire Indiana winter on what most American homeowners use in less than 2 months. 8 times more efficient. Not a little better. 8 times. Alright, let's talk about your house. Not a farmhouse in Indiana. Your house. The one you're sitting in right now that faces whatever direction the developer decided looked good from the street. Here's the first thing I want you to do. Right now, or when you get up from this video. Walk around the inside of your home and find every window that gets direct sunlight between 10 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. South-facing windows. They might be in a bedroom. They might be in a spare room you barely use. They might be in the kitchen or behind your couch. Find them, because those windows are, right now, the most valuable real estate in your house, and there's a very good chance you've been treating them like they're ordinary walls. Most homeowners have curtains or blinds across their south windows all day. Heavy ones. For privacy, for aesthetics, out of habit. Which means they are blocking the only free heat source available to them for 6 hours every single winter day. Step 1 is simply this. From October through March, every south-facing window in your house gets fully uncovered from sunrise to sunset. Pull the curtains back completely. Rearrange furniture if you need to. Let the light pour in. That alone will raise the temperature of a south-facing room by 3 to 5 degrees on a clear winter day, with zero cost and zero installation. But to actually store that heat so it keeps working after the sun sets, you need thermal mass. And that's where the $300 comes in. Here's what I recommend, because it's what I built myself, and it works. Go to a tile supply store or a landscape yard. Buy enough dark-colored slate tile to cover a section of floor directly in the path of your south window sunlight. Dark slate absorbs heat efficiently and releases it over many hours. You can lay it directly over existing flooring using standard tile adhesive, no subfloor work, no contractor. Alternatively, and this is an option I've seen work extremely well in smaller spaces, buy a row of food-grade water containers. Paint them with flat black exterior paint and place them along the interior south wall where the sunlight hits. Water stores more heat per volume than almost any other common material. Even 3 or 4 5-gallon containers, painted black and filled with water, placed where direct sunlight hits them each day, will release a measurable amount of warmth through the night. Step 3 is the thermal curtain. When the sun sets, you close a heavy insulated curtain across those same south windows. This is not a decorative curtain. It's a curtain specifically rated for thermal insulation. You can find them at most home goods stores for around $30 a panel. That curtain traps the warmth that your slate or your water containers are now slowly releasing back into the room. The mass radiates. The curtain holds it in. The room stays warmer through the night, without the furnace cycling on. My own setup slate tiles across a 6-foot section of south wall in my living room. 2 black water containers behind a bookcase where they're completely invisible, and 2 thermal curtain panels cost $274 in materials. My heating bill the following January was down 34% compared to January the previous year. Same house, same winter, same outdoor temperatures, different results. Because I stopped waiting for the furnace to heat the room and started letting the room heat itself. There's something bigger underneath all of this, and I want to say it plainly before we close. The Amish didn't keep this knowledge because they were old-fashioned. They kept it because they understood something about dependency that most of us only figure out when the bill arrives. Every time you pay a heating bill, you are paying for a problem that was built into your house on purpose. Not by malice necessarily, but by indifference, by a system that had no incentive to build you a house that didn't need fuel. The families I visited in Indiana and Ohio aren't comfortable because they're lucky, or because they live differently. They're comfortable because they never stopped thinking about their homes as living systems. Systems that interact with sunlight, retain warmth, and work with the physics of their environment rather than against it. That knowledge is not secret. It's not restricted. It belongs to anyone willing to look at their south wall with fresh eyes. You don't need to move. You don't need to rebuild. You need $274 in materials, one Saturday afternoon, and the decision to stop leaving your south windows covered while the sun does its work on the other side of the glass. The warmth is already there. You just have to let it in. Before you close this video, I want you to do one thing. Go find your south-facing windows. Not tomorrow. Tonight, when you walk through your house, take note of which rooms get afternoon sunlight. Stand there for a moment. Feel whether the room holds that warmth after the sun moves on, or whether it's gone by the time you sit down to dinner. That's where you start. Drop a comment below and tell me. Type 1 if you have south-facing windows you've been covering all winter. Type 2 if you already have stone or brick inside the house and you're just realizing now what it's been doing for you. I read every single one. If this gave you something real, not just something interesting, but something you're going to actually use, then subscribe. Because every week I'm going to bring you another piece of what traditional builders knew and modern contractors forgot. The next video is already finished. It covers a wood-fired water heating method used in Amish communities in rural Ohio, one that produces hot water for an entire household on a single load of wood per day. Costs under $180 to build, and requires no connection to any utility line whatsoever. Some counties have tried to restrict it. The Amish build it anyway. Because they built it before those codes existed and they know exactly what it does and doesn't produce. I'm going to show you the whole thing. You stayed until the end of this video because something in you already knew the standard answer wasn't the only answer. Trust that. The sun comes up tomorrow morning whether your house is ready for it or not. Make sure yours is.